The alarm cuts through the silence and pulls you from the void, not into clarity, but into immediate deficit. Your eyes open to the same gray ceiling that watched you fail yesterday, and before your lungs can even fill with enough oxygen to fuel your brain, your hand moves with a pathetic autonomous reflex, sliding under the pillow to grasp the black mirror. It is not a conscious choice. It is a programmed surrender. The blue light floods your retina and signals the cortisol to spike, and in that fraction of a second you have lost the battle for the day before you have even stepped onto the battlefield. You scroll. The algorithm feeds you a tailored cocktail of other people's victories and global catastrophes designed specifically to monetize your anxiety. You lie there paralyzed in the warmth of the sheets while the digital world unloads its garbage into the sanctuary of your mind. The fog is heavy and oppressive. You check email, then Slack, then the news, then the markets. Every notification is a demand on your attention, a withdrawal from a bank account that is already overdrawn. You tell yourself you are just checking the time or waking up, but you are actually dosing yourself with cheap dopamine to numb the dread of the tasks ahead. 10 minutes pass, then 20, then 40. The window of opportunity for sovereignty closes. You are now running late. The panic sets in. You rush to the shower with a mind already cluttered with the debris of 1,000 irrelevant inputs, and you haven't even had a single original thought yet. You are consuming before you are creating. You are reacting before you are acting. This is the reactive dawn. You are not a commander surveying his terrain, you are a casualty drifting downstream in a river of noise. You enter the workspace exhausted not from exertion, but from processing signal interference. You sit at your desk, and the brain fog is so thick you can taste it. You reach for the caffeine, not as a strategic tool, but as life support to jumpstart a heart that feels heavy with indecision. You look at the to-do list, and feel nothing but a dull, crushing weight because your executive function was murdered in bed by a 6-inch screen. This is how the modern man dies, not with a bang, but with a scroll. You are technically awake, but your spirit is still in a coma. You have traded your birthright of focus for a feed of endless distraction, and you wonder why you feel burnout in your bones. You are trapped in the loop. You are a passenger in your own body, watching the day happen to you rather than making the day happen for you. The morning was meant to be the forge where you temper your will, but instead it has become the slaughterhouse of your ambition. Do not make the mistake of thinking this paralysis is unique to the digital age, for the mechanism of resistance is timeless and written in the blood of history. Rewind. 1,800 years to the damp, freezing banks of the Danube River in the winter of 170 AD. Inside a heavy canvas tent, the most powerful man in the known world lies awake in the dark, listening to the wind howl across the frontier. Marcus Aurelius is not sleeping in a palace in Rome surrounded by marble and servants. He is on the edge of the empire, leading the Roman legions against the Germanic tribes in a war that seems to have no end. The air inside the tent is bitter cold, and his body is failing him, plagued by ulcers and chronic chest pain and the sheer exhaustion of holding together a civilization that is trying to tear itself apart. He lies there in the dark, knowing exactly what awaits him the moment he throws off the heavy wool blankets. He faces endless briefings from generals' reports of plague spreading through the camps and the burden of judicial decisions that will determine the fate of thousands. Every fiber of his biology screams at him to stay in the warmth of the bed. It is the same voice that whispers to you when the alarm goes off. It is the voice of comfort, seeking to preserve energy, and the biological imperative to hide from the harshness of reality. Marcus had every reason to stay in bed because he was the emperor, and no one could fire him, and no one would reprimand him. He could have slept until noon, and the world would have waited, and the legions would have stood guard. But he did not yield to the comfort because he engaged in a ruthless dialogue with his own soul, which we can still read today in the personal journals he never intended for us to see. He wrote to himself asking if he was made for this, to lie under the blankets and keep warm, or if he was made for action. He challenged his own nature, asking if he was created to feel nice or to do work. He tells himself, "I have to go to work as a human being." He strips away the title of emperor and looks at the bare fact of his existence, realizing that plants and birds and ants and spiders go about their individual tasks, putting the world in order as best they can. And yet he is unwilling to do the job of a human being. He shames his own reluctance, recognizing that sleep is necessary for survival, but he has exceeded the limit of necessity and encroached on the territory of indulgence. He gets up and steps out of the tent into the freezing mud, not because he wants to, but because his philosophy demands it. He understood that to deny the morning is to deny one's own nature, and he saw the bed not as a sanctuary, but as a soft grave. If he stayed there, he would be safe, but he would cease to be alive in the only way that matters. He chose the cold and the duty, and he chose to step into the chaos of the war camp to bring order to it. This is the standard. You are not fighting Germanic tribes, and you are not dying of the Antonine Plague, but the battle is exactly the same. The enemy is the resistance inside your own mind that begs for 5 more minutes of unconsciousness. Marcus defeated it every single morning for 19 years of war, and you can defeat it for 1. Your battle is technically harder than the one fought on the Danube, because Marcus Aurelius fought against the passive resistance of nature, whereas you are fighting against the active aggression of a trillion-dollar industry. You are bringing a biological knife to a digital gunfight. Understand that the hardware inside your skull evolved over 200,000 years to scan the savannah for threats and resources, but it is now operating in an environment designed to exploit every single one of its vulnerabilities. When you wake up, your brain is in a delicate transitional state, moving from delta and theta waves into alpha waves, which is the bridge to the subconscious and high-level creativity. This is the holy hour where your neuroplasticity is primed and your will is a blank slate waiting to be written upon. But instead of writing your own command code, you hand the pen to Silicon Valley engineers who have spent billions of dollars A/B testing the precise color of a notification badge to hijack your amygdala. The mechanism is chemical warfare. The moment you unlock that screen, you trigger a dopamine loop that tells your primitive brain that you have accomplished something when in reality you have done nothing but consume data. At the same time, the sheer volume of information spikes your cortisol levels before your feet hit the floor, forcing your body into a low-grade fight-or-flight response. You are effectively inducing a panic attack before breakfast. This chemical cocktail shuts down the prefrontal cortex, which is the CEO of your brain, responsible for long-term planning and emotional regulation and impulse control. You are lobotomizing yourself voluntarily. By the time you actually start your work, you are already suffering from decision fatigue, because you have subconsciously made hundreds of micro-decisions about which email to read or which headline to click or which photo to like. You have spent your limited daily supply of willpower on things that do not matter. This state of being is what we call the drift. It is the path of least resistance, where you float downstream pulled by the current of the algorithm rather than swimming upstream toward your objective. In the drift, you are reactive and never proactive. You confuse motion with action, and you confuse noise with signal. The modern trap is the lie that you need to be connected to be informed, but the reality is that you are being connected to be controlled. The algorithm does not care about your mission or your sovereignty or your peace of mind. It only cares about your engagement time, and it will burn your potential as fuel to keep its engagement metrics high. You are not the customer, you are the product, and your attention is the resource being mined. If you do not install a firewall around your morning mind, you are simply a node in a network serving a master that is not you. You must understand that this is not a bad habit. It is a systemic failure of your personal defense perimeter. You must execute a fundamental shift in how you view the timeline of your day, because most men view the morning as a time to catch up on what they missed while sleeping, but the Stoic views the morning as the only time to establish the fortress before the siege begins. This is the principle of first input authority. The law is simple and absolute, and it states that whoever controls the first input into your consciousness controls the output of your behavior for the next 16 hours. If the first input is digital chaos, then the output will be anxiety and distraction. But if the first input is stillness and strategic thought, then the output will be focus and power. You cannot build a skyscraper on a foundation of swamp water, and you cannot build a sovereign life on a foundation of reactive scrolling. You need to understand that your attention is a limited tactical resource, and the morning is the refinery where that resource is purified. The shift requires you to apply the dichotomy of control with surgical precision. You cannot control the markets or the news or the emails that flooded in overnight, but you have absolute imperial control over the first 60 minutes of your awareness. This is your inner citadel. To breach this citadel voluntarily is an act of treason against yourself. You must treat your mind like a secure facility that requires a security clearance to enter, and the random thoughts of strangers on the internet do not have clearance. You are establishing a mental air gap between your consciousness and the world. In this gap, you forge the armor that you will wear into battle. The world is noisy, and it wants you weak, but in the silence of the sovereign morning, you remember who you are before the world tells you who you should be. You must stop viewing silence as emptiness and start viewing it as a weapon. The shift is the realization that you do not need more information, you need better filtering. When you wake up, you're in a state of pure potential, and you must guard this state with your life. You're not missing out on anything by ignoring the world for an hour. You are gaining the perspective required to actually navigate it. The news will still be terrible in an hour, and the emails will still be demanding, but you will be different. You will be fortified. You will be operating from a position of leverage rather than a position of lack. This is about reclaiming the throne of your own mind and refusing to abdicate your authority to a glowing rectangle. Execute the following sequence immediately upon consciousness, because hope is not a strategy and you need a system to guarantee victory. The first step is the digital air gap, which means your phone does not sleep in your room. It sleeps in the kitchen or the hallway, charging on a surface you cannot reach from bed. You must physically remove the temptation so that the path of least resistance is to get up, rather than to scroll. If you use your phone as an alarm, buy a cheap analog clock because you are not paying $200 for an alarm. You are paying with your soul. When you wake up, you do not touch a screen for the first 30 minutes. This is non-negotiable. You are establishing a perimeter. The second step is the physiological cold start. Your brain is dehydrated and your cortisol is peaking, so you must intervene biologically before you intervene psychologically. Drink 20 ounces of water immediately to flush the system, and then expose your eyes to natural light or high-lux artificial light to set your circadian rhythm. You are signaling to your ancient biology that the hunt has begun. Do not sit down. Do not contemplate the meaning of life. Just hydrate and move. Movement generates energy. It does not consume it. The third step is the tactical audit. This is where you transition from defense to offense. You sit down with a pen or a dedicated workspace, and you perform a 10-minute reconnaissance of your own mind. This is not writing about your feelings. This is war planning. This is specifically why I built the Stoic Life OS Notion template, to force you into this exact structure every single morning without friction. You answer 3 specific questions. First, what is the one mission-critical objective that makes today a win? Second, using premeditatio malorum, what is the specific thing that is likely to go wrong today, and how will I handle it? Third, what is the one thing I am grateful for right now to ground myself in reality? You execute this audit, and only then are you cleared to engage with the world. You have donned your armor. You have sharpened your blade. Open the gates. The world is noisy. Keep your fortress distinct. Deploy the protocol.